Something inside you is sabotaging your life. No matter how much you try to follow a path, does something invisible keep pulling you back? This isn't bad luck or lack of discipline. It's a part of you that has been rejected and repressed. Carl Jung called this the hidden side of our psyche, where we bury everything we don't want to accept about ourselves. Along with your fears and repressed impulses, your greatest talents, your authenticity, and, most importantly, the clues to your true purpose are also there. But how do we recognize this hidden part? How does it influence our choices and limitations? And above all, how can we use it to find meaning in our existence? It all starts with understanding what the shadow truly is. From an early age, we are taught to hide parts of who we are. We learn that certain emotions are inappropriate, that some desires are wrong, that not all aspects of our personality are acceptable. As children, we seek approval from parents, school, and society, and to be loved and accepted, we begin to repress everything that might make us undesirable. You're in a conversation, and someone makes a comment that sparks immediate irritation. Their voice, their manner, their attitude bother you more than they should. You react impulsively, unaware that this antipathy isn't actually about them, but about something buried within you. Perhaps the tone of authority that made you angry as a child, or the spontaneity you learned to suppress. This is the shadow acting without you realizing it. If someone was taught that feeling anger is wrong, they will learn to suppress this emotion. If a curious and energetic child was constantly reprimanded for their restlessness, they may internalize the belief that it's better to be quiet and restrained. Over time, these aspects are banished to the unconscious, forming what Jung called the shadow. And this isn't just an abstract or philosophical concept. It's real and manifests concretely in our lives. Every time we overreact to something or someone, every time we feel an irrational dislike for a person, every time we find ourselves doing something we swore we'd never repeat, the shadow is at play. The problem is going through life unaware of this, believing we are fully conscious of our thoughts and emotions, without realizing that much of our behavior is driven by hidden forces within us. One of the main ways this manifests is through projection. Since we don't want to admit certain aspects of ourselves, we start seeing them in others. Have you ever noticed how some people intensely hate certain behaviors that, in some way, reflect their own actions? For example, someone who fiercely criticizes arrogant people might unknowingly act with arrogance in many situations, or someone who excessively judges those who seek attention might secretly crave recognition. But the shadow doesn't only hold what we consider negative. Within it also lie suppressed talents, legitimate desires we've learned to deny, and untapped potential. Sometimes we feel envy toward people who live authentically because they express something that exists within us but has remained dormant out of fear or repression. Someone who is drawn to a freer, more creative lifestyle but was taught to follow a traditional and safe path might project their frustration onto those who had the courage to take risks. The admiration we feel for certain people can be a reflection of parts of ourselves that we have forgotten. The more we deny the shadow, the more we become its prisoners. If we ignore our fears, they will control us. If we repress our desires, they will find distorted ways to manifest. The shadow doesn't disappear just because we choose not to see it. On the contrary, the more we avoid it, the more it acts behind the scenes of our minds. Emotional crises, self-sabotage, and destructive patterns are symptoms of this. What Jung proposes is not that we surrender to our dark impulses, but that we learn to recognize them. Individuation, the process of becoming whole, only happens when we integrate all aspects of ourselves. This means looking inward with honesty and realizing that we are not just what we show to the world. Within us, there are contradictions, hidden desires, and aspects we prefer to ignore. Integrating this means taking responsibility for who we truly are, without masks or illusions. When we stop projecting our problems onto others and start examining them within ourselves, we discover that there is much more power in self-awareness than in denial. After all, how many opportunities have been lost because we let fear, a fear we didn't even know existed, stop us from acting? How many passions have been stifled because we were taught we weren't good enough? Have you ever hesitated to speak in public, even when you had something important to say? Have you ever turned down an opportunity because you thought you weren't capable, even though deep down you wanted to try? These are the effects of everything we've just discussed. When we look at our darkness with honesty, we discover that hidden within it is the key to our purpose. We are always taught to seek a purpose, a meaning for life. But this search is often frustrating because we look outward instead of inward. We want ready-made answers, clear directions, but we ignore the fact that the true compass to finding our path is not in the external world. Jung believed that our life purpose does not arise from a conscious desire, but from the integration of our wholeness, including the aspects we prefer not to see. This means that many of the answers we seek are already within us, just buried under years of repression. What makes us uncomfortable reveals what truly matters. What hurts us points to what we need to heal, and what we try hardest to avoid is exactly what leads us to growth. Our traumas, for example, are not just open wounds, but also sources of learning. Many people discover their true purpose precisely by facing their pain. An individual who has suffered rejection throughout life may develop deep empathy for others and find meaning in helping those who go through the same struggles. Someone who grew up in a repressive environment may feel called to work with creativity and freedom. When we look at our suffering not just as something to be forgotten, but as part of our individuation journey, we begin to see that there is a hidden meaning behind everything we experience. The same applies to our repressed desires. How often do we feel an inexplicable attraction to certain activities, but convince ourselves that they are not practical or right? A passion for drawing may have been set aside after years of hearing that it wouldn't lead to a stable future, without realizing that, along with the pencil, a part of oneself was also buried. The desire to travel and explore the unknown may have been stifled by the pressure to seek stability at all costs, leading to a constant feeling that something is missing, without understanding exactly what. The process of finding purpose, according to Jung, is not about creating meaning for life, but about revealing what is already within us. By looking at our repressed emotions, unacknowledged desires, and even our destructive patterns, we can begin to see a pattern. This process requires the courage to face what we have avoided for so long and the willingness to question our own certainties. But the reward is immense. A life lived with authenticity, aligned with our true essence. Purpose is not outside, waiting to be found. It is inside, waiting to be remembered. But how do we do it? Most people spend their lives trying to escape their own shadow, believing that by ignoring their fears, anger, and repressed impulses, they will become better, stronger, more evolved. But the truth is the exact opposite. What we repress does not disappear. It grows stronger and acts unconsciously. Only when we integrate these hidden aspects can we live authentically. The shadow should not be fought but understood, and the key to this is self. Our emotional reactions are a map to what we have yet to recognize in ourselves. Whenever we feel intense anger, unexpected envy, or discomfort in certain situations, we are facing a manifestation of the shadow. If someone triggers irritation or disdain in you, ask yourself, what exactly about this person bothers me? Is there a chance that this trait is also part of me, but I refuse to admit it? This is the mirror effect. We project onto others what we deny in ourselves. The more we reject certain aspects of our personality, the more they show up in our interactions with the world. When we criticize someone with exaggerated intensity, it is likely that there is a hidden connection between what irritates us and something we have repressed. Those who harshly condemn impulsiveness in others may be suppressing their own spontaneous desires. The external world serves as a reflection of what we have yet to recognize internally. That is why observing our judgments and reactions can be an essential step towards self-improvement. But this process goes beyond mere observation. It is not enough to simply recognize our projections. We must actively work to integrate these repressed aspects, and this means taking responsibility for who we truly are. This is not a comfortable path. Accepting that we possess traits we judge in others, that we have desires we deny, and that we carry internal contradictions can be unsettling. The upside is that we not only free ourselves from the weight of repression, but also unlock immense creative and transformative potential. Jung believed that all the energy we repress into the shadow can be channeled into something positive. The fear that paralyzes us can transform into courage. Repressed anger can become a driving force for action. Denied desires can become a source of motivation and creativity. This process requires practice, reflection, and, above all, a willingness to look inward with honesty. But over time, integrating the shadow makes us more balanced, more authentic, and, paradoxically, lighter. After all, the heaviest burden we carry is not our flaws or fears, it is the constant effort to hide them. Conceptually, everything is clear, but how do we apply this in daily life? We begin with something essential: self-inquiry. One of the first steps is to pay attention to the judgments we make about others. The traits that bother us most in others often reflect parts of ourselves that we have repressed. Aversion to confident people may reveal a hidden desire to express ourselves more freely. Contempt for those who show vulnerability exposes the fear of acknowledging our own fragilities. Observing these reactions is the first clue to what is hidden in the shadow. Another approach is to analyze the emotions we avoid feeling. We all have emotions we repress because we consider them inappropriate or painful. Some avoid anger, others sadness, others fear. But repressed emotions do not disappear. They manifest in distorted ways, through emotional outbursts, constant anxiety, or patterns of self-sabotage. Ask yourself, which emotions do I struggle to deal with? In what moments do I feel uncomfortable without a clear reason? What am I afraid others will discover about me? Writing about this is extremely useful. Keeping a journal where we record our emotional triggers, recurring dreams, and behavioral patterns can help us see connections that previously went unnoticed. Additionally, writing allows us to access deeper parts of our unconscious, bringing to the surface thoughts and feelings we usually ignore. Another approach is creative expression. Art, writing, music, or any form of creation can be safe and effective ways to explore hidden aspects of the psyche. What we cannot express verbally finds an outlet through creativity. Jung believed that art played a fundamental role in the individuation process, as it allowed unconscious content to emerge in a symbolic and accessible way. The most important thing, however, is the willingness to face the shadow with honesty. Integrating it does not mean acting impulsively on everything that has been repressed, but rather recognizing its existence and learning to deal with it consciously. This process requires patience, self-reflection, and discomfort. The farther we stray from who we truly are, the emptier we feel. The closer we get to our wholeness, the more meaning we find in life. The shadow, then, is not an enemy to be defeated, but a guide that will lead us exactly where we were always meant to be. The search for purpose leads us outward, when in reality, the answers are within us. If you enjoyed this content and want to explore more about life's deeper questions, subscribe to the channel and share this video with others who are also on the path to awakening.